episode of the Splendid Life Show. Today, my special guest is Alan Combies. He's a life coach and change expert who helps people from all over the world by empowering them to take control of their lives. Specializing in a modality known as faster emotionally focused transformations, or faster EFT, Alan has had the privilege of helping people with addictions, post traumatic stress syndromes, fears, phobias, relationship issues, grief and loss, anxiety, stress, and more. In 2014, he spent 4 weeks volunteering at the Habilitat, a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. He lived among the residents and worked with them side by side, and the results were outstanding and acknowledged by both staff members and residents. So Alan's true passion is learning and understanding how the mind and body work and applying that knowledge both to himself and you so that you can live a happier, healthier, more abundant life. So welcome,
Thank
Alan.
you. Thank you very much, Ming. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to know how you got started with Faster EFT. I always like to, ask my guests about their journey.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's always an interesting story. I'm always like, how far do I go back? You know, because it seems like, in life, everything just leads to where you are now. But
Yeah.
I can tell you this: I grew up in a, sort of just a middle-income family up in Sacramento, California, a little town up there, capital of California, and um, I just had sort of had a normal childhood, but somewhere around my teenage years, I began getting a lot of social anxiety. Um, yeah, I found it very difficult to speak in front of people, even one-on-one conversations, let alone public speaking. That was like whoa, and it really started affecting my relationships, and it started affecting my schoolwork. I am and was a musician, and I thought that that's what I wanted with my life. But as I came across other people and my peers, I started thinking, oh, they're better than me, And I don't know if your audience or you are familiar with that sort of mindset. You look at somebody and you see them in a particular area or how they act in a certain way, and you think, oh, I don't measure up to that, and so you
Yeah.
think you're lacking somehow. And so this was me, and I really did this through my late teens into my early 20s. I did move down to Los Angeles, which is where I'm based now. I moved down here in '95, and I've been here ever since. And I went to a music school because I finally committed. After getting a degree in psychology, I thought, you know what? I need to give this music thing another shot, right? So I moved
Hmm.
down to Los Angeles, went to a year program here for drums. And again, my social anxiety kind of got in the way. I had a wonderful time, and I learned some amazing things here, but I didn't network with the right people. I was shy, that sort of thing.
Mm.
And so what I ended up doing was falling back into my old patterns, and I ended up turning to substances, a lot of alcohol especially. I was a heavy chain smoker. I've turned to alcohol as a social lubricant. And I did that for many, many years. And as you can imagine, it began to affect my health, it began to affect my life. And and at some point, enough was enough. I had decided to really start turning inward. I'd actually gotten arrested for driving under the influence, and I was
Mm.
forced um, to 144 AA meetings. And
Mm.
so I decided at that point, I was questioning myself, I was turning inward, and I said, okay, I'm going to go to every single one of these meetings and do
Mm.
everything I have to do because I don't know, maybe I'm an alcoholic. I wasn't sure.
Mm.
And I did go to those meetings, and what I did discover was that um, while I came very close to getting a sponsor, if your audience is familiar with AA, getting a sponsor and really getting enraptured, I didn't. What going to all those meetings made me do was really step back and again take a look at my life and take a look at what's really going on here, what's really driving the bus. what is the motivation for my behavior?
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to study and learn and grow, I studied things like neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy. And as I began to dive deeper into these subjects, one thing led to another. I decided at one point that being a musician and a bartender wasn't good enough, so I went into financial services. It was quite a jump. And I jumped into this job, and really it was, just forcing. I mean, I used a lot of the things that I learned through NLP and things like that.
Uh-huh.
NLP, neurolinguistic programming, really is what taking control of what you do in your mind.
Yeah.
And so I was using affirmations, I was writing down goals, I was doing all these different things, and I was accomplishing things. But it was sort of like, I use the analogy, um, when we don't take care of the emotional part of the equation, and you try to accomplish something, by action alone,
Mm-hmm.
it's like banging your head against a brick wall, expecting to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you might get through, but it's going to hurt. It's going to leave a mark. So
Yeah.
that's what I was doing. I was really banging my head against the brick wall. But it continued. I saw people being successful all around me. I saw
Mm-hmm.
people accomplishing things, and I would have some success, and then I would fall flat on my butt. And so I took a look around. And I said, what's the difference between them and myself? And again, I turned inward, and I continued my studies in NLP, hypnotherapy. The Secret came out around that time, 2007 or so. And I really got interested in that. And through that, I found something called EFT, or emotional freedom
Emotional.
technique.
Uh-huh. Right.
And it was presented to me as a way to release blocks. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm sure I have some blocks there somewhere, right? And I
Yeah.
thought, right, and I thought, okay, well, let's check this thing out. And they had me tapping on my karate chop point and on my head and doing all these different things. And I thought, well, this is kind of weird. This is a little weird. This is strange. So I kind of just put it on the back burner. But a few months later, if not a year later, I was kind of at the bottom. I was living. I had to move out of my place on the beach, and I was living in a friend's garage, literally. My business was like I said, up and down, mostly down. I had racked up a lot of personal debt, and to top it all off, so my credit was kind of shot. And to top it off, the garage that I was in was not coded for the city, and so the city came snooping around and basically told the owner of the house that they had to evict me and
Mm-hmm.
convert it back to a garage. And so here I was, about to be homeless, literally
Mm-hmm.
homeless, with no credit. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And that's when I literally went on Craigslist and I found a law of attraction coach.
Uh-huh.
And as a last ditch attempt, and I had 2 sessions with this gentleman. Luckily, he wasn't charging a whole lot at the time. One of the things that he did was he reintroduced me to emotional freedom technique, or EFT.
Uh-huh.
And he said, Alan, I really want to try this with you. Have you heard of it? And I said, oh yeah, I've heard of it. And I said, listen, I'm willing to try anything. And so he did a session with me. We did a few rounds of what we call tapping, traditional EFT style.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I thought, well, I don't know, lighter? I said, I don't know. I don't know if I notice any difference.
Mm-hmm.
However, I look back at that time. He did 2 things. He did the tapping, and we really tapped on money issues. We tapped on beliefs about money, and then he
Mm-hmm.
also introduced to me good people at Abraham Hicks, and he
Mm-hmm.
introduced me to a book called "Ask and It Is Given" by Abraham Hicks, and those 2 things, I believe, began for me where things began turning around very, very fast. I went from 40 grand in debt, living in a garage, to out of debt, to having a job with income, living on a marina, literally water, right on the waterfront. Um, and I began traveling. I went to Amsterdam just months later to see a friend. And I, at that point, decided that I was going to become an EFT practitioner. And then shortly after doing that, I was doing some research, and I came across a gentleman who's got, right now he's got nearly 900 videos on YouTube. His name is Robert Smith, and he's the creator of Faster Emotionally Focused Transformations. And I saw his video, and I realized what he was doing was combining a lot of the things that I had worked on and studied, neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy, and EFT. He was combining all these things in the belief system, and I saw it right away. And he was getting very, very quick changes, very fast changes. And I had a friend coming over that night that I was going to work with. She came over, and I decided to just basically mimic what I had seen Robert do on his video. And I worked with her. She had a relationship issue, and she was sobbing when she came to see me, sobbing. By the end of the session, she was like, it's not a big deal. You know, completely changed.
Yeah.
Completely changed emotionally. She could not go back and reference the pain.
Right.
Right? And it wasn't like the event never happened. She just had a different reference point. There was no emotional charge to the situation. And right then and there I said, this is it. This is what I'm going with. And I began studying him. I got to know him. I've traveled with him, stayed at his house. He stayed at my house. He's become my mentor, and most importantly, my friend. And he's changed my life. And with him, I've traveled to Habilitat in Hawaii to work with the residents at the Drug and Alcohol Rehab Center. He's been going there for about 6 years now, twice a year. Started off going by himself, and then he began bringing a team of practitioners. And like I said, I went twice this year with him, and it was an amazing journey. So that's kind of how I ended up here today. I have an office in Los Angeles where I see clients, and we hold local meetups, little free talks about once a month here, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to go back and talk a little bit about your experience at Habilitat. Can you describe what you guys did? I know you're all volunteers, so I mean it's
That's right.
just awesome that you guys do that. Yeah, tell us about your experience there.
Yes. Well, it is a volunteer experience, although they do give us a place to sleep and they give us meals. We're actually living among the residents. So the first time I went, I stayed in bunks with other residents, and these are guys that, many of them have been to prison, and this is their last resort. Most of them are there because, they're court ordered, or it's their absolute last resort. They've tried everything: heroin addicts, methadone, methamphetamine, cocaine, alcohol, of course. So the first time I went, I really didn't know what to expect. Although we do a lot of work prior to going out there, we do a lot of prep work. Habilitat is a very unique place. It was started by a gentleman named Vinny Marino, and he was out of Long Island, New York, I believe. And he was a heavy user, big-time addict. And it's through his journey of getting sober and really changing the way he thinks. So he formed a program, and this program is not short-term. It's not funded by any government agency. It's completely self-sustaining. They run several businesses out of the establishment, and so they don't depend on anybody else for funding, which is very important because they're different. They're not based on the almighty dollar. They're really based on what works, and what's worked for them is a program where a person comes in and they systematically really rebuild their belief system about who they are, they teach them how to be social again, they teach them how to interact, they teach them how to be part of a team, how to care about their fellow human being. And it's a remarkable place, and it's about a 3-year program. Some people get out sooner, some people stay late, longer, but it is a remarkable program, and their success rate is around 65% after 3 years, I believe it is. So amazing place. So we went there. Like I said, Robert's been going there for about 6 years or so, maybe not that long, maybe 4 or 5 years. I lose track. But he started going by himself, and he took his model of, and we spoke a little bit about this earlier um, before we got on.
Mm-hmm.
He took his model for weight loss. You know, he had been working with weight loss a lot, and initially he thought, weight loss is not really fun. You know, who wants to work with that? But what he discovered was there's a lot of emotional triggers. There's a lot of emotional baggage around weight loss. You know, weight loss is not just about dieting and exercise.
Yeah.
There are a lot of emotional drivers behind why we eat, what we eat, things like that. And so as he really got into that, he realized that this was a lot deeper and a lot juicier
Yeah,
than
it's
just
you know,
diet and
it's not
exercise.
just what you eat, right? Because like some people, they say they just look at food and then they get fat. I don't know how, but they say it seems like they just look at food and they get fat. I'm like, wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Amazing.
Most of the time, they think they're just looking at it, but they're eating it. You know, there's unconscious eating patterns. You can have
Mm,
somebody with, sit on the couch with a bag of potato chips, full bag of potato chips. They look down and it's gone. They say, "Who ate the potato chips?" You know, it's like it's just an
yeah,
automatic
unconscious.
program. It's an
Right.
unconscious program. And
Yeah.
so, you know, when we work in that arena, what we're really doing is bringing those habits to conscious awareness and then
Mm,
changing how they represent them in their minds.
yeah.
So Robert took his weight loss model and he took it to Habilitat when it comes to drug abuse, and he began applying it to the residents there and fine tuning it and really creating what we now call the drug protocol
Mm-hmm.
for FasterEFT, the drug addiction protocol. And he then began bringing some of his top practitioners. The first group that he brought were kind of young, and he realized that this is probably not the environment for young practitioners. You know, ones that aren't. You know, one of the things that we do in Faster EFT as a modality is we really believe in healing ourselves first,
Yeah.
and then reaching out and helping others. The more you can heal yourself, the more capable you will be of healing other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so by having young practitioners there, they got emotionally triggered. You know, there's a lot of things that came up.
Mm-hmm.
And so he then decided to only bring more advanced practitioners. And that's right around the time I went. My first trip was in January. And even though I had been doing this work for about 4 or 5 years prior to being there, I still got triggered. Uh, and
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, okay, this is an opportunity to heal, and that's exactly what I did. Um, I recognized, I think that you get to a point in this work where you're able to recognize when you're getting triggered and not just fall into an automatic program. And so I was able to use it as a healing opportunity, and I was able to reach out and help so many of the residents there. We work for 2 weeks. We have a week, 2 days off in between, and typically we see about about 6 residents a day.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 in the morning, or 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the evening, and we'll do that every day, except for our 2 days off.
Mm-hmm.
And typically on those days off, we'll go into Waikiki or go on a hike or something like that. You know, it's beautiful, Honolulu, Hawaii. Um, so it's an amazing experience. And I went back in July, which was unique. I got to follow up with a lot of the residents there
Uh-huh.
and see our work. We've done
Yeah.
videos. If you go to YouTube, you can find videos on the addiction protocol, and you can see some of the before and afters.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when we work with residents there, there's sort of two different things that we're looking at. We're looking at, number one, what are the emotional drivers? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what are the memories? Because addictions are typically driven by an internal process. That is, what we hold on to typically drives our behavior. And what I mean is, if you have experiences, you know, we're born into this world. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose the city that we're born in or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're born and then we adapt and we
Mm-hmm.
learn to survive in our environment. And as we learn to survive, we have experiences, and we encode those experiences in our mind as metaphoric expressions. And so as we grow up, these metaphoric expressions determine our behavior, because our thoughts determine the feelings that we feel, and those feelings determine our reactions and actions in the world, right? The actions that we take. And so if you have dramas, traumas, anything that when you think about causes pain, the tendency is to, if you don't have a tool, if you don't have a resource to let go and change that resource, that metaphor, the tendency is to try to run from it or try to escape it or just push it down. And no matter how much you push it down, wherever you go, it's still there, right? And so it can begin running in the unconscious. It can begin running in the background. And so typically what people do is they turn to drugs, alcohol, sex addicts, shopping addicts. The list could be a mile long of things that people do to escape their problems, to escape their issues. And so that's one of the things that we work on is we take a look at, okay, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life? What are the major things? What was your relationship like with your parents? Growing up, the early years especially. However, it doesn't have to be just the early years. It can be anything, any traumatic experience in your life. So that's one part of the equation. The other part is really going in and taking a look at, okay, what is the physiological response to the drug? So in other words, well, here's a great example. One of the people that runs Habilitat, he's one of the administrators there, he'd been clean and sober, used to be a heroin user, clean and sober for 17 years. Yet here they were sitting around a table talking about, the drug, alcohol, the addiction protocol, and how to refine it and how to make it better. And they talked about, they said, well, what if we get like needles, get needles out and see if we can trigger them. And just by doing that, this person that had been sober for 17 years went, oh, it was like he felt just by, there was no needle in the room, but just by mentioning a needle and doing this, just by doing this,
signals,
it created a physical reaction in his body.
Wow.
Now, if you've been sober, being sober for 17 years is one thing. Being sober for a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year, if you still have that inside of you, what are your chances of a relapse, right? And so what we take a look at, is how do we take that offline, and that's what we do. We take the physiological response and we change it to where it sort of flatlines. There's nothing really there. And oftentimes what we do is create a repulsion from the drug as well. A lot of times when people think about getting high, all they remember is the high. They don't go all the way through and remember the pain, the loss, all of the agony that doing that drug costs them. So if they just go to that point and create that. So we change all of that. Again, it's an emotional.
Just making a new association for them to for the repulsion part. You're making a new association with what is the act of taking the drug or something, or is it something like because bad stuff happens after they take the drugs and they go high, and then maybe it's something destructive. So do you just kind of remind them of the destructive consequences, or you just create something just out of whatever? What do you do?
Both. And it really depends on the individual, of course. As we're sitting with a client, it depends on their individual lives. This is it's not, even though we have a protocol, there are variables because we're all human.
Right.
And so it really depends on their life story, what they've been through, and all of that. But a lot of times we do. The interesting thing is once you take the emotional high out of it,
Mhm.
then it becomes easier to dump stuff on it. We actually call it dumping. We associate things like human excrement, or
Mhm.
barf or something like that. Um,
Mhm.
but in a way that is effective. And again, it's the reason it's effective is because we're first taking the high emotional charge away,
Mhm.
and then it becomes easier to dump these negative things on it. And it really does get to the point where they think about their drug and they go, oh, they think about this
Mhm.
other
Mhm.
reference.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's sort of like taking what they once had and just putting something else over the top of it. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I get it. Mm. So you could do this for drug addictions, maybe food addictions, or I mean, I can you tell us about the similarity of this addiction kind of a feeling, or what's the common common things that lies across all these types of different addictions?
Hmm.
Drug, alcohol, food. Yeah, what's behind that?
Yeah. I would really say what's the common theme through all of it is the avoidance factor, the running away from factor, the escape. You know, we're not really alcoholics. We're not really drug addicts. We're escapeaholics. You
Hmm.
know, and we're just trying to escape our pain. And
Hmm.
so the big issue, the main deal, the real deal, as I like to say, is going back and taking a look at all of the things that drive steer your bus. All the emotional traumas, the dramas, the pains. Um, you know, uh, PTSD. It's what is PTSD? It's painful memories with high emotional association.
Mhm.
These things will steer our boat. And so what we need to do is go back and change how we represent all of those things. And as we do, the drive to escape through substances like drugs, alcohol, food. I mean, let's face it. Food is a very emotional thing. Before did this work, I would turn to fast food, high caloric foods. Of course, alcohol was a big one, beer,
Mhm.
um, all sorts of things. And I just don't have that drive anymore. I don't have that desire um, to get the double cheeseburger with extra bacon or whatever it is, at the fast food stop,
Mhm.
because it doesn't appeal to me anymore. And this isn't something that I didn't work on myself on weight loss,
Mhm.
yet I weigh as much as I did in high school,
Mhm.
and I'm
Mhm.
43 years old. So,
Mhm.
um, it's just a happy byproduct of working on yourself emotionally. And so that goes
Mhm.
across the board when it comes to food, when it comes to smoking, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever the addiction is. It's the emotional things. It's the escaping, the avoidance of those things that we're carrying around inside. And so going inside and making peace with those is really the answer.
Mm. Oh, this kind of made me think. Now, is perfectionism another type of addiction?
Perfectionism is an interesting one. It's really the um, you know it's the perfectionism doesn't exist. And so perfectionism is usually a fear of not being good enough
Mm.
and a fear of criticism. And it's important to note that who's really criticizing who? Who's really judging who? It's all self-judgment. It's all self-criticism. And it's based
Mm.
on, again, your past references. And so, once again, by going in and changing those references, you change the behavior. You know,
Mhm.
we often think, okay, if I just do it this way, everything will be okay. If I just change my actions, Yet on the flip side, you've got all of these emotional programs that are telling you, hey, if you do it, they're all going to laugh at you. If you do it, you're going to look stupid. If you do it, you're going to, they're going to judge you. And none of that has happened, yet you created it all in your mind before you've even done anything. And so what ends up happening is you don't do anything.
Yeah.
You know? So perfectionism is really the lowest form of self-love. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it's a lack of self-love, what you mean?
Yeah. Well, everything is put there with love. It's all put there to protect you. In
I
some
see.
way,
Okay.
you think that if you don't do it, or if you wait till it's perfect, then you'll be safe.
Yes,
You
yes,
follow
I
me?
get it.
So everything is
Yeah.
really trying to keep you safe. It's all a
Right.
self-survival mechanism. However, as we grow and we learn and we expand and we leave our environment and we meet new people and experience new things, those old patterns can begin causing friction, and keeping us from really experiencing life. And that's when they become problems. You can hold on to some of the stuff for your whole life, and it may not rear its head as a problem. It's when it affects our lives, it's when it affects our livelihood, that we feel the pain and we realize, okay, now it's time to do something. Now, most of us, 99.9% of us, have been taught, okay, if you feel pain, you just got to kind of deal with it, or you got to run away from it, or you have to avoid it. The real deal is, when you feel that pain, it's actually a blessing, because it's giving you a signal that you need to heal this in order to move on to the next level. In order to grow and expand, to become that person you want to be, you need to heal whatever's coming up for you in that moment. And that's been a real game changer for me. Is being that guy trying to start a business in financial services, wondering why I wasn't, wondering why I was having such a miserable time. All of these negative things, my mother telling me, we're just not entrepreneurs, all the references from, my teenage years of not being good enough, all of these things were rearing their head and, driving me crazy, because at the time I didn't have a way to make peace with them. I didn't have a way to heal them. FasterEFT is a way to go in and recognize these emotional triggers, this pain, as a blessing. Because when it's there, it's now become conscious. It's in your conscious awareness.
Right.
And it's giving you an opportunity to heal. And as you heal that, you literally then step into the person that you're wanting to become.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah, we cannot heal what we don't bring up into the light and see, right? Yeah. So, that's very interesting. So can you tell us about how faster, maybe kind of tell us, like, kind of show us how this faster EFT, what do you do? uh, do you tap on your clients, or do they tap on themselves, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So FasterEFT does involve tapping. It does, if your audience is familiar with emotional freedom technique, that is a tapping technique. FasterEFT does not rely solely on tapping, although we really enjoy tapping, and it's often the easiest way to get people to begin using it. And the reason we use tapping is because there's actually meridians on the body. Meridians were mapped out by the Chinese like 2,000 years ago. And it's been scientifically proven that there are actually meridians that run through the body. And there are certain parts where these meridian lines come closer to the surface of the skin, and these are meridian points. And so with FastEFT, Robert, started doing his line of work in Oklahoma City, actually, and he realized, that being in the Bible Belt of the world, he realized that, tapping on your head and doing arm testing and, moving your eyes around, things like that, that people weren't going to really, they're going to think it was voodoo or something, And so he really wanted to bring it to the masses, and so he wanted to clean it up. And so what he found out was there's certain meridian points that actually correspond with the organs in the body that produce adrenaline or feelings.
Okay.
And of course, what we're really dealing with here is the fight or flight reflex, right? Stress is the number one killer in the world. And what is stress? Stress is the body's reaction to perception. It's the body's reaction to your mind, to your thoughts. That's really, I mean, at its most basic form, FasterEFT is a stress reduction technique, right?
Yeah.
And so what he did was he took a look at, okay, these meridians that correspond with the heart, the lungs, the small intestine, the large intestine, the kidney, the stomach, and he said, okay, what are these points? And so I'll share those points with you right now. The first one is, we call it the eyebrow point, and there's actually one on each side of your face here. But oftentimes, yeah, so it starts right where your eyebrow starts, pretty much right here. But usually what I do is just say, hey, tap between your eyes. Yeah, so you can kind of just tap between your eyes like this. So just take 3 or 4 fingers.
Yeah.
Good. Good job. And I always say it's a very forgiving process, so you don't have to worry about getting it perfect, right? So that's the eyebrow point. We call it the eyebrow point. The next one is just around the side of the eye. So it's not right up on the corner, and it's not way back here on the temple. It's just sort of right in between here. And again, you have one on each side of your face. You can tap on one, the other, you know. You can tap on both. Okay? Good. So that's the side of the eye. So we have eyebrow, side of the eye. The second one is underneath the eye. And it's just underneath the eye socket here, kind of in the soft part where your cheek is. Yep.
The
And again,
soft
you have,
part?
yeah, perfect, right about there. And so you have one on both sides. You can tap on one, the other. You know. Good. That's under the eye. And then from there we go to what we call the collarbone. And it's actually, if you feel the soft part of your neck, and you go down and you feel that U-shaped bone there. And then on either side you have the 2 tips of that bone.
And the knobs, like knobby.
Yep, you got it. Little knobs. And if you go down 1 inch to 2 inches, that is where you tap on either side there, if you can see me. That is what we call the collarbone point. So you can just tap. And again, one or the other. I use this point a lot when I'm driving. You know, it's really easy to drive in.
I can see it. Okay,
yeah.
I should do that.
Yeah, there you go. And then the final point is your wrist. And for the wrist, you just squeeze it. Just squeeze your wrist like this.
Squeeze.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Squeeze. And let go.
And usually,
Squeeze.
yes, yep, perfect. And usually by the time, the reason for the wrist, actually, by the way, is because there's several points in the hand, meridian points, and they run up and down the arm like this. And so as you squeeze your wrist, it's a shortcut to all of these points here.
Stimulating those points, yeah.
Yes. So again, FasterEFT is not just about tapping. However, this tapping seems to work most effectively and very quickly. However, there is more going on than just tapping on meridians and relaxing the body, but we can talk about that further if we have time. So those are the 5 points, and one of the things that we do with FasterEFT is we want to put you, get you associated with your problem, and then pull you out. So you're associated, and then we pull you out. And oftentimes, you know, the tapping pulls you out, but also we want to take you to a happy memory. So, you know, what's curious is people think that they're slaves to their emotions. But if you close your eyes right now, and I invite you to close your eyes, and your audience can close their eyes, whoever's watching this, and I'd like you to recall something that made you feel really good. You know, it could be maybe a vacation, a destination that you were on. It could be with someone that you really love. It could be the first time you held your child. You might see yourself in an open field with the sun. You can feel the sun on your face. Wherever it is for you. Maybe you're by the ocean. But take just a moment and go there now. Feel what you felt. See what you saw. You may even notice the sounds. You may even notice the smells. And really make that come alive. And just feel that. You may feel there's a warm light around your heart. Just allow that feeling to expand now, that light expanding, filling your chest. Good. Even more. Excellent. Now take a deep breath. Blow it out. Open your eyes, look at me. Good job. So you just felt good for no reason at all, right?
For some reason, not no reason.
Right. Well, you notice you're still sitting in this room. You're still
Yeah.
sitting at your computer.
Right.
However, you just felt good because you wanted to, because you created it in your mind.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so your problems are the same thing. Your problems are self-creations. Yes, the event happened at one point in your life,
Mm,
but it's no longer happening. You know, it's no longer real. It's only existing as a metaphoric expression in your mind. And
mm,
so what we have you do is go in and associate with it. You can think of it as a self-hypnotic trance, which is really what it is. You know, we're all the best hypnotists in the world when it comes to our problems, honestly, you know. And so every time you go inside and you think about your problem, you're going into trance. And the more often you do that, the better you get at it, you know.
mm-hmm.
And so what we do with FasterEFT is we have you go inside that trance, notice how you're doing it, you know, go back there, go back to the event, see the person, whatever it is, and then you apply this tapping. And so the tapping is doing several things. It's relaxing the body, it's sending a
Mm-hmm.
signal to the organs, basically telling the body that, hey, this thought doesn't equal this feeling anymore. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also pulling you out of the trance. It's also distracting you from the trance. It's
Mm-hmm.
breaking that state. So it's doing all of these things together at once to be very effective. And of course, once you do as many rounds as it takes to sort of bring down the emotion, and always
Mm-hmm.
go back and forth to the positive emotions, the positive feelings, you basically go
Mm-hmm.
down and tap it down until you say, okay, it no longer bothers me. How would I rather have this go? How would I rather hold on to this? Because again, it's not happening now. It's
Mm-hmm.
just how you're representing it in your mind. So if you're going to hold on to something in your mind, it might as well be something good. It might as well be something positive. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that we really focus on with FasterEFT is changing how you represent it to a positive,
Right.
so that that
Right.
drives you forward, so that drives you in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, like what is the gift or the lesson or positive
Absolutely.
lesson? Yeah.
Exactly. There can be, and oftentimes those things show themselves after you remove the negative emotion, after you
Mm-hmm.
remove the pain. Those things can happen automatically. They can change, they can shift. Other times you might have to just say, okay, how would I like this to go? How would I prefer this to go? Or you can send a positive feeling to people in the memory. You know, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but it's really, we call that the flip, and it's a quintessential
Mm-hmm.
part of FasterEFT, is taking the negative
Yeah.
reference, flipping it on its butt, really, and making it a positive reference. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, should we walk through it?
I think
Do
we're
we have
a bit
time?
running
No?
out of time, but
Okay.
I would definitely recommend everybody to try it. And go to Alan's website, www.theskillsforchange.com. I highly recommend him. He's worked on me and changed a lot of stuff that were, you know, blocking my growth. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a
Awesome.
great modality. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about it, and I should mention that I do free 30-minute phone consultations, which I find is a good way to get to know you. If you are curious about it, we can talk. I can get to know you. You can get to know me, and really decide if this is something that you want to move forward with. I actually prefer talking with people before we get together for the actual session. It's a
Yeah.
great way to sort of prep them for what to expect, and also a way for me to get to meet my clients before we work together. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's
again, you
great.
can go to
Okay.
theskillsforchange.com for that.
theskillsforchange.com. All right,
Yeah.
great. Thank you very much, Alan. Everybody,
Thank you.
bye. Take care.
Thanks, Jamie. It was awesome.